Okay. Good morning once again, please, and I hope you're having a great time within this COVID-19, the introductory parts of body fluid. Issue of total body water, we spoke about the properties of water, and then we also talked about the distribution of total body water, and we also spoke about the factors that affect total body water. Then we went forward to talk about the composition of total body water, and then we also looked at the distribution. And in the distribution, we mentioned very well about the issues of the water in the body forward to still further reclassify extracellular fluid, and we mentioned that we had the intravascular fluid and the extravascular fluid, and we said the intravascular fluid was indeed plasma. It is the body fluid that is compartmentalized, that is actually within a fixed space. And then we further talked about the extravascular fluid, which is the interstitial fluid. Okay, and we spoke about it as the fluid that bathes the cells. Okay, and we also mentioned that this fluid would be trapped in certain spaces, and we call them transcellular fluid, and we mentioned the spaces. Okay, and then we discussed about the composition of body fluids, especially the ECF and the composition of the ICF. Okay, and we mentioned that we talked about the major anions and the major cations in both compartments. We spoke also about the pH and their osmolarity, and I said it's good that you take note of this. And then there's one key thing that we highlighted, which is worth mentioning, is that the difference between the interstitial fluid and the plasma is the protein concentration. Okay, we mentioned that the protein concentration in the plasma is a little bit higher than in the interstitial fluid, and we mentioned that in the plasma we had about 17 or so milliequivalents per liter, and in the interstitial fluid it's scanty and about 5 milliequivalents per liter. Okay, and then we said the interstitial fluid, so to speak, it's the connection between the plasma and the intracellular fluid, and it also contains a lymphatic system that ferries this protein. Good for us to note that. Okay, and I did explain to you about the hamburger effect, or the chloride shift. Okay, and this accounted for the reasons why we could have a difference in the pH of the arterial blood and the venous blood, the hematocrit in venous blood and the arterial blood. Okay, then we went forward to talk about exchange of fluids within the compartment between the ESF, the ECF, and the ICF, notably either from the plasma into the cells, into the interstitial space, as well from the interstitial space into the cells. But our discussion actually centered more on exchange of fluids from the plasma across the capillary cells into the interstitial space. Okay, so that is what we discussed, and that is where we wanted to lay more emphasis. And we did talk about the Starling's forces that states that the filtration of fluid is as a result of balancing gradient, the hysteroscopic pressure gradients and the oncotic pressure gradients that exist both in the capillaries and in the interstitial fluid. Okay, and I did mention that at the level of the capillaries we have forces, and in the interstitial space we have forces. Okay, and so we have a balance of this. This will now determine the direction of fluid movement. Okay, and then we spoke of the capillary. Remember, the capillary are the sites where cardiovascular activities are affected. Okay, that's where the cardiovascular activities, exchange activities, are affected. So we call them exchange vessels. So at the capillaries we hand the venous end. Okay, so at the arterial end, as it's pumping against the walls of the blood vessel. okay, and we said it was about 37 millimeters. Then, but this force this pressure try to back into the capillaries. So if you take 35 minus 25, you see that you have a net pressure filtration force of what? Of 10 millimeters of mercury, which forces fluid into the interstitial spaces. But at the venous end, the dynamics change. Okay, the dynamics do change, and the oncotic pressure still remains the same because the plasma proteins are large and they cannot cross easily across, and they cannot traverse easily the capillaries, except of course when we are talking about fenestrated capillaries or the sinusoidal capillaries, where the apertures in between the capillaries are large. But here we are focusing on continuous capillaries. Okay, so here at the venous end, the oncotic pressure is still 25 millimeters of mercury, but at the hydrostatic pressure has dropped due to the enlargement of the wide diameter of the veins, making the pressure to drop. Okay, and then the pressure drops to about 17 millimeters of mercury. Okay, so you see that the net pressure difference is about negative 8 millimeters of mercury, forcing fluid to leave the interstitium into what? Into the capillaries. But not all of this fluid is filtered. Okay, not all of this fluid is filtered. So we have some fluid that is still present in the interstitium, but this is ferried via the lymphatic system back into the cardio, into the general circulation. So this is very vital. And then after that, we spoke about how we could be able to measure this total, how we be able to measure the volume body fluids. Okay, remember we're talking about total body water. We're talking about the ECF volume, the ICF volume, the plasma volume, okay, and the interstitial space volume. And we mentioned that the concept, the principle by which this occurs is via the indicator dilution principle or the dilution principle. By the indicator dilution principle, a known amount of a specific indicator is injected into the body, and it's allowed to equilibrate and mix, and then we can begin to aspirate or withdraw volumes of or begin to withdraw body fluid volumes until we have a steady state concentration. Then when we get the steady state concentration, from there we can be able now to calculate our body space volume. Okay, but then of course there are certain characteristics pertains to specific compartments. Okay, and we also have to take note of the amount of the substance injected that is lost either through urine, majorly probably maybe estimate accurately that which is lost through sweating. Okay, so and I did give you the formula for the calculation of the volume, the body fluid volume. And then of course we now talk about the various substances that could be used to calculate or to measure or to estimate body fluid volume. And for total body water, we said we could use radioactive titrated water. So I gave examples of deuterium oxide, tritium oxide, urea, antipyrine, aminopyrine. So these are the substances we could use. And then for the measurement of extracellular, we could use inulin, we could use sucrose, we could use mannose, we could use isotopics. As you said, we could use radioiodinated serum albumin, we could use Evans blue dye, which is a dye, and then we use many things. Clearly, what will happen to the ECF volume or the ICF volume if we inject a hypertonic or an isotonic solution? Okay, what are the disturbances? Of course, rightly putting it this way, what are the various disturbances in the ECF volume and osmolarity? Okay, yes, and what will be the consequences in the volume and the osmolarity? Okay, that is quite important. So today we will try to look at after giving a brief review, so we'll try to look at water balance. Okay, so we're talking about body fluid. So today we are looking at water balance. Okay, and somebody, is it Laura Moyo, is asking the notes for this lecture. be serious. If you are not serious, you go out of this side. Okay, be serious. These are notes I've given to you ever since. And even if you don't not serious, this is I'm recapping what was done in the last in the last lecture. Okay, so this is what you should have found out from your classmates. Okay, please. Okay, so today we are looking at water balance. How do we? Water is vital for the survival of for survival. Okay, and we mentioned that the body is made of about 60% to 70% water, and this water is vital for enzymatic reactions, for physical processes, for transport of ions, for regulation of temperature, transporting nutrients and waste products, and many things. So imagine just you can begin to think of the importance of water in the body, but then we need to regulate this water. Okay, we need to regulate intake, and we need to also regulate output. Okay, so we're trying to look at water balance. So we're talking about how do we balance intake and how do we balance output. Okay, so we're looking at water gain and water loss. Okay, so that's what we're discussing today. Okay, so this is the balance between the daily amounts of water that is gained and the water that is lost. Okay, and so from the material I gave to you to study, averagely, on average, it's an average, but of course we have extremes where it could be below or high, but we're looking at average. So averagely, under normal conditions, both the water gain and the water loss are 2,000 mils per day. That means 2.3 liters a day. So the total body water is kept constant by regulatory processes. Okay, the total body water is kept constant by regulatory processes to maintain this within 2,300 mils per day. Okay, so we gain 2,003 mils a day, and then we lose it, and so we try to maintain our body fluids within this. Okay, so we want to look at how does the body control water. Okay, but before we look at how the body controls water gain, we want to look at how is the water gain in the first place. Okay, we said that the water gain is normally about from two different sources, two major sources. We have exogenous water gain and we have endogenous water. By exogenous means it comes from outside the body. You take it orally. Okay, you there's water that is gotten through drinking water and other fluids. Probably you got up this morning, you've drank water, probably maybe you took tea or you ate some, or so okay, you took tea or probably you took juice, whatever, but it's exogenous, it's coming orally. Okay, so this is one of the ways in which water is gained into the body. Okay, and this amount is about 1,400 mils per day. But please note that these are average. Okay, we have people who are on water therapy, they could take more, but remember, as you take more, the same way you will give out more. So there are processes within the body that you'll be able to maintain the water within the ambits of homeostatic parameters. So the first we're talking about water gained. Okay, so which is exogenous. Okay, so you're taking it orally. It's about 1,400 mils per day, and then could also have some quantities that you eat. You get through fruits, through meat, through vegetables. So that's averagely about 600 mils per day. Okay, and we could also have endogenous water, which is formed inside the body as a result of oxidation of hydrogen in the foodstuffs. Okay, so you have processes within the body, metabolic processes that occur, and water is a byproduct. Okay, water gain. So that is quite vital that you get that to understand. And then we have taken more water. Averagely, we've taken about 2,300 mils. So for us to maintain the water within homeostatic parameters or within our homeostatic framework, we need to lose almost a commensurate amount of water. So how does the body, within a comfortable ambient room temperature of probably 20 to 25 degrees centigrade, within normal room temperature, because you don't expect that if you're under the sun or in a hot or humid, you lose more water. Okay, so but then there are processes within ambient conditions. Okay, the body loses water. Maybe we say loses 1,400 mils in the urine, 100 mils in feces, 350 mils in evaporation from the respiratory tract, and you have about 450 mils from what? From the skin. Okay, so the water that is lost from the respiratory tract through evaporation or from the skin, we call this insensible water loss. It's imperceptible. You may not be able to to you cannot easily observe it under ambient conditions. Of course, as you speak in problem, you are perspiring and giving, and water is coming out. Okay, and then you also have water that is coming out from your skin, which is probably you may not perceive it except when you have sweating, but this one is just more or less like some perspirations. Okay, so we call that what insensible water loss, and which is water loss from what the skin and the respiratory tract. Okay, please, it's very important that you get your other classmates, get connected, and then follow. Don't rely on the fact that the video will be available online. Please don't rely on that. We can't guarantee it, right? Okay, so Evelyn Kaganja is saying that probably I should repeat the amounts of water that is lost through urine and feces. We said through urine we have 1,400 mils. And then through feces, we have what? 100 mils, okay? And then from evaporation via the respiratory tract, we have 350 mils. And then from the skin, we have 450 mils. And I said water that is lost from the skin and the respiratory tract, we call them what? Insensible water lost, okay? Insensible. You cannot be able to sense it. You cannot be able to, so imperceptible. Okay, so far, do we have questions? Because what I'm entering to now, please, you need to follow. Okay, what's the next thing I'm entering to now? You need to follow. I'll be mentioning so many things that are not in the PowerPoint I sent to you. Okay, okay, okay. So that is quite good. And so, any questions so far? So, what we want to look at now? How do we control water gain? Okay, how do we control now? You said you took 2,300 meals in a day. What is it that prompted you to take that amount of water? Okay, what prompts us to drink water? Of course, for basically thirst. Okay, thirst is that bodily mechanisms, that prompts us to desire to drink water. Okay, and the body has what we call the thirst center. And this thirst center is located in the anterior part of the hypothalamus. And by some means of an unclear mechanism, as we age, this thirsting mechanism, the are dampened. That's why elderly people sometimes, even though they may be thirsty, but they don't feel thirsty. So with these people, what happens? They are just given a regular amount of water to take because they won't feel thirsty. Okay, their sense of thirst is dampened with age by an unknown mechanism. Okay. Robert Botha is saying I should kindly repeat the term water loss through skin. Call it what? The insensible water loss. Okay, insensible water loss. Okay. Katende says, so could you please repeat the term you said is used to refer to what the water loss via the skin and the respirator? Call it insensible water loss. Okay, insensible. Insensible water loss. Okay, so it's insensible. It's imperceptible. Okay, it's insensible. It's imperceptible. Okay, imperceptible water loss or what? Insensible water loss. Okay, that's beautiful. So we are talking about the concept of thirst. Okay, now how did we get to this point? We are looking at control of water gain. How do you gain water? What prompts you to take water? Okay, now there is an inner drive, and that drive of course is driven by complex processes within the body, and we'll try to the center that regulates thirst is called the thirst center thalamus. Naomi Nachilima, I said the thirst center is located what? In the anterior hypothalamus. Okay, and I mentioned that the sensitivity of this center to changes in blood volume and blood osmolarity dampens with age. Okay, it's dampened with age. Okay, so that even elderly people tend not to feel or sense this thirst, tend not to sense this changes. That means the sensitivity of this center is dampened. So what is done in these people is that what they are given regular amounts of water periodically during the day to able to rehydrate them. Okay. And so what is the function of this anterior hypothalamus? Please try to follow me keenly. Okay, beautiful. Yes, Genesis has responded to Naomi, say it is referred to as what? As the anterior hypothalamus. Okay, and so what is the function of the anterior hypothalamus? It constantly monitors the blood concentration of sodium and other substances. So the function of the anterior hypothalamus is what? It constantly monitors the blood concentration of sodium and other substances. And then, so this is a center within the anterior hypothalamus, and as blood is passing through, the brain, passing through the brain, and so it senses the quantity, the amount of sodium and other solids within the blood. So it more or less like what? It checks the osmolarity of the blood. Okay, it checks the tonicity of the blood. Okay, it takes the tonicity of the blood. So it senses. But then this is a center within the brain, so it receives inputs. Okay, so where does it receive input? It receives inputs from sensors in the blood vessels that monitor blood volume and blood pressure. Okay, I'll take it over again. The anterior hypothalamus monitors blood concentration of sodium and other substances. Okay, and so it receives inputs from sensors in the blood vessels and that monitor what? The blood volume and the blood pressure. So this is what the anterior hypothalamus does. Okay, so get this important. Okay, so this is what the anterior is, what it monitors. It constantly monitors the blood concentration of sodium and other substances. And then it receives inputs from sensors, receptors. Okay, remember when we started introducing concepts of receptors, when the receptors will detect changes. Okay, they detect change in energy in a particular environment, and they fire, they send impulses to an integrating center. So this anterior hypothalamus is an integrating center, okay? So which receives impulses that are coming from sensors that are located within the periphery, okay? That are located either within the blood vessels. And what do these sensors do? These sensors monitor the blood volume and blood pressure. So when we have changes in blood volume and blood pressure, the sensors that depict this, we call them either baroreceptors or osmoreceptors or volume receptors, okay? So baroreceptors, baro means pressure. So these baroreceptors detect changes in pressure. Osmoreceptors detect changes in osmolarity. So you have volume receptors. They also detect changes in what? In the fullness of the blood vessels. Okay, so they detect changes in the volume of the blood. Okay, so they pick up this, they sense these changes, and then they are stimulated and they send signals to the integrating center. And where is the integrating center? The integrating center is in the hypothalamus, in the anterior hypothalamus. Okay, so this depict then they cannot be able to respond. Okay, so for example, when the blood volume or the blood pressure falls too low, and what could cause the blood pressure to fall too low? Okay, Victoria Muongo is asking, sir, was that baro as barometer? Yes, the same like barometer. So barometer, what is a barometer? It's an instrument that measures pressure, isn't it? Okay, that measures, for example, atmospheric pressure, isn't it? Okay, so here we have baroreceptor. It's a receptor that detects changes in what? In blood pressure. Okay, so then Chipo is asking, how does high sodium chloride concentration in the blood cause hypertension? Okay, that is good, Chipo. We could answer that here, but then we will need to discuss so many things, which we will cover them in cardiovascular physiology to be able to bring that to you. Okay, but remember we have individuals who call them salt sensitive, with this one called salt sensitive hypertension. Now, by that concept will be at the level of minutes. Okay, so we will a drop in blood volume or blood pressure. Okay, so what could bring about a change in blood volume, a drop in blood volume or blood pressure? Okay, let's think together. For example, we have bleeding. If you have bleeding, examination, you have loss of blood. Okay, you have bleeding, so your blood volume could reduce, isn't it? What if you have excessive fluid loss of fluid from sweating? There are people who probably perspire too much. Okay, they sweat a lot, so that if they don't replace the sweat by drinking a lot of water, they may lose blood volume. Okay, then if you have diarrhea, people who have diarrhea, losing diarrhea is loss of extracellular fluid, isn't it? Okay, and Ruth is asking, so please, could you repeat what baroreceptors detect? Now, baroreceptors, Kumba has replied, they detect what? Blood pressure changes. That's important. Okay, so they detect what? Blood pressure changes. Okay, so now we have a decrease in blood volume, which could be as a result of bleeding, excessive loss of fluid from sweating, from diarrhea, and then we could also, what could also happen if, what if we have an increase in blood sodium concentration? Now, have you ever noticed that? Have you ever noticed that when you take tea in the morning, you feel thirsty? When you drink tea, or that you've added sugar, or probably maybe you drink some kind of soda, you feel thirsty, you want to drink water. Okay, so those are some of the things that could be able to also stimulate the thirst centers. Okay, then we also have certain diseases. Okay, we have, for example, this. What if we have a disease in the brain that will be able to reduce the sensitivity of the thirst center? For example, if we have a brain trauma in which the thirst centers in the anterior hypothalamus are destroyed, you could be involved in an auto crash, that there is trauma to the brain, and the third centers are destroyed. What also if we have an aneurysm? Okay, what is an aneurysm? Aneurysm is an enlargement of an artery caused by weakness in the arterial wall. Okay, if you have an aneurysm, okay, yes, it could also which an aneurysm that affects that area of the hypothalamus. Okay, so we saw now, because when the anterior hypothalamus is stimulated, it sends a signal: drink something, drink something. Okay, it sends a signal: what? Drink something. Okay, and so this is quite vital, and it's quite important. It sends signals, and then we will also see again now. Now, the sensing of the third center is independent. There's a group of osmoreceptors that detect an increase in sodium concentration. We call them, there are structures within they are called, they are osmoreceptors. So they detect changes in osmolarity in the blood, and they are called lateral terminalis, and then you want to call it subphonica organs. Okay, these are a group of organs that are located outside the blood-brain barrier. There are a group of organs that are located outside the blood-brain barrier. There are 4 or 5 of them. I think there are 4 or 5 of them. We have the area postrema. We have the organum vasculosum of the lateral terminalis. We have the median eminence. We have the subphonica organs, and sometimes the people in the pineal gland. Okay, so we call them what? The VOLT, but then you can take that off. Vasculosum of the lateral terminalis. So you have the subphonical organs. You have the median eminence. And then some people will put the pineal gland there. Okay. So the structure of the last, as well as the subphonica organs, they are quite distinct structures that also changes in the osmolarity of the blood. Okay. Now, please follow keenly. What do? These detect changes in the osmolarity of the blood. And so what do? They send signals to the hypothalamus to produce the antidiuretic hormone. Okay, so they send signals to the hypothalamus to produce what? The antidiuretic hormone. And this antidiuretic hormone is synthesized from the posterior hypothalamus. Okay, and there are some in the posterior hypothalamus synthesize the antidiuretic hormone. We have the paraventricular nuclei and the supraoptic nuclei. Okay, so the antidiuretic hormone is synthesized and produced by the paraventricular nuclei and the supraoptic nuclei that are present where in the posterior hypothalamus. Okay, so this antidiuretic hormone, what does it do? It prevents water loss. Okay, the antidiuretic hormone prevents what? Water loss. Okay, and so we will discuss that when we talk about how water is prevented from being lost. Okay. So patience, Chilechi is asking the question. I have observed that thirst is easily quenched when we drink cold water as compared to drinking warm water. So does temperature of what we take affect thirst control center? That's a very important question. And we, of course, we also have to understand that the hypothalamus is important in both the regulation of temperature as well as water intake. But to conclusively say that cold water quenches more thirst than warm water, of course, I will look into that and probably we'll have a better explanation for that. Okay. And Genesis asking, please tie the names of the parts that form ADH. We have the supraoptic nucleus and the paraventricular nucleus. Okay, or the paraventricular nucleus and the supraoptic. Okay, supraoptic nucleus or nuclei. Then you have the paraventricular. Nucleus. Okay, so I was giving you a broad picture, but now let's get specific. We're talking about water gain, right? Yeah. So now, so we gain water if, for example, if we have a drop in ECF volume, a drop in ECF volume, or what we call hypovolemia. How then? How does a decrease in volume, blood volume, bring about this drinking? Okay, how does a decrease in blood volume stimulate us to drink water? Please kindly follow. Namutala is asking if I could kindly repeat what produces ADH. I'll come to that when I will talk about how water is prevented from being lost out of the body. Okay, so but then we're talking how do we gain water to the body? So in situations where you have hypovolemia, and which this hypovolemia could be as a result of bleeding, vomiting, diarrhea, and other things. So how do we gain water? So when there is a decrease in blood volume, listen keenly, and blood is passing through the kidneys, first we'll have a decrease in tissue perfusion because being perfused into tissues will drop. So you have renal ischemia. Okay, so the blood passing through the kidneys would reduce. So we call it renal ischemia. And then there's a group of a group of cells in the glomerulus. Okay, we call it the juxtaglomerular apparatus, JGA. Okay, the juxtaglomerular apparatus. The juxtaglomerular apparatus comprises three groups of cells. You have the Lassie cells, the macula densa cells, and the JG cells. Okay, so you have the juxtaglomerular J. So we have it's JG cells, please. JG cells, not LG cells. So we have when there is a decrease when there's a decrease in blood volume, very low, yes, very low, and so we have there is a decrease in blood flow to tissues, and one of them is what is the kidney. Okay, and in the kidney, we'll still come to renal physiology if we ever get there. So we have the nephron, which is the structural and functional unit of the kidney, and in the nephron has different parts. We have the glomerulus, we have the loops, and then we have the loops of Henle, we have they call it the ducts, and then we have the so we when blood enters through the arterioles into the glomerulus, which is in the Bowman's capsule. So within the glomerulus, we have a structure, okay? Yes, which is of course, which more or less it's all in connection with the distal convoluted tubule. So we have a structure called the juxtaglomerular cells, okay, or the juxtaglomerular apparatus. And this juxtaglomerular apparatus comprises the Lassie cell, the macula densa cells, and the JG cells, okay. And we won't go into the details to what the function of each of these cells. But one of the things is that the JG cell senses a decrease in blood volume due to a renal ischemia. Okay, so when we have a decrease in blood volume, there's a drop in perfusion in the kidneys. Okay, so the JG cells, supply. This renal ischemia causes the JG cells to release a substance called renin. Okay, renin. Okay, renin. Renin is a substance produced from the JG cells, okay, from the juxtaglomerular apparatus. So this renin, some people call it an enzyme, some call it a hormone, but it's more or less an enzyme. Okay, so this renin is released from the kidneys. And what's the function of this renin? This renin converts alpha-2 angiotensinogen that is produced from the liver to angiotensin 1. Okay, the renin converts alpha-2 angiotensinogen that is produced in the liver to angiotensin 1. Okay, and this angiotensin, this of course within the blood. So as the blood is passing the liver and other tissues, this angiotensin 1 is converted to what? To angiotensin 2. Okay, to angiotensin 2. And this conversion is by an enzyme called angiotensin converting enzyme. Okay, angiotensin converting enzyme. At least if you are not even familiar with this enzyme, I'm sure during this COVID-19 pandemic, you must have heard something about the angiotensin converting enzyme receptor that the SARS-CoV-2 acts by binding to the receptor that is present in the lungs, in the pneumocytes. Okay, and I so encourage you that you should also, both the politics and the science within the COVID-19 pandemic, you'll be able to learn a lot of things. Okay, Charity Ngoma is asking me, what does renin convert? Okay, first, renin is produced from the juxtaglomerular apparatus. Okay, it's an enzyme that converts alpha-2 angiotensinogen. Okay, it converts alpha-2 angiotensinogen. Okay, that is produced by the liver. Okay, and when we come to plasma proteins, you will see here this about it. So the alpha-2 angiotensinogen is produced or synthesized from the liver, and it is converted to angiotensin 1 by renin. Okay, and so the angiotensin 1 is converted to angiotensin 2 by angiotensin converting enzyme. Okay, by angiotensin converting enzyme. Okay, so this is important. So angiotensin converting enzyme converts angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. It's very important. And I was saying that even if you haven't heard about angiotensin converting enzyme before, at least within this COVID-19 pandemic, you should have probably in reading literature, you should have also heard about the fact that the SARS-CoV-2 enzyme acts by binding to ACE receptors. Okay, and these receptors are abundant in the lungs and other is in the functions. What are the functions of angiotensin? It stimulates the thirst. Okay, so angiotensin 2 stimulates directly the thirst center. What does angiotensin 2 does again? Angiotensin 2 stimulates the adrenal cortex to produce aldosterone. Okay, angiotensin 2 stimulates the adrenal cortex to produce what? Aldosterone. Secondly, angiotensin 2 is a potent vasoconstrictor. Okay, it's a potent vasoconstrictor. Okay, that means what? It causes constriction of the blood vessels. Because remember, when you have hypovolemia, there's a tendency also that what this hypovolemia could be accompanied by what? A decrease in blood pressure. So when there's vasoconstriction, this increases the peripheral resistance as well as what? Increasing what? The blood pressure. So the first thing, angiotensin 2 directly stimulates what? It directly stimulates the first center. Angiotensin 2 stimulates the adrenal cortex to produce what? Aldosterone. And what is the function of aldosterone? Aldosterone acts in the distal convoluted tubule to stimulate the reabsorption of sodium and water. Okay? The reabsorption of sodium and water. Then what another function of angiotensin 2? Angiotensin 2 also causes the reabsorption of sodium in the distal convoluted tubule. Okay? Then angiotensin 2 stimulates the posterior hypothalamus to synthesize what? ADH. Okay? ADH. So Lucas Salunda is asking if I could repeat on angiotensin. Please follow keenly and try to follow me. I may not take over everything. It doesn't make sense when you're asking. Sometimes be specific. Okay, we're saying that when we have a decrease in blood volume, hypovolemia, the tissue perfusion drops. So you could have renal ischemia, and when we have renal ischemia, with decrease in blood flow to the tissue. Decrease in blood flow to the tissue. Yes, we will have renal ischemia. Now we have a decrease in blood flow to the kidneys, right? And so there will be a sensing of this this ischemia, and this will lead to the production of alpha-2 angiotensin, a gene that is produced from the liver, to angiotensin 1. Okay, and angiotensin 1, this is in blood. As the blood is passing through the liver and other tissues, it is converted to angiotensin 2 by the angiotensin converting enzyme. And what are the functions of angiotensin 2? The first, we said it directly stimulates the third center. That means it directly stimulates the anterior hypothalamus to produce thirst. And then angiotensin 2 also stimulates the adrenal cortex to produce what? To produce aldosterone. Okay? And what does aldosterone do? Aldosterone acts on the distal convoluted tubule to cause the reabsorption of what? Of sodium and water. Angiotensin 2 is also a potent vasoconstrictor. That means it's a powerful vasoconstrictor. It constricts the blood vessels. And I said, when we have decrease in blood volume, there is also a possibility that it could be accompanied by what? Hypertension or a decrease in blood pressure. So the vasoconstriction increases the peripheral resistance, and also this will cause what? An elevation of the blood pressure. Then we said angiotensin 2 also stimulates the anterior hypothalamus to produce what? To produce antidiuretic hormone. Okay? And also when we have so we are discussing about how we gain water, okay? And so we talk about hypovolemia, okay? We talk about hypovolemia. So this hypovolemia sets the cascade of events which we've discussed. This hypovolemia can also directly stimulate the third center directly, in the sense that, of course, the hypovolemia can decrease salivary secretion, okay? And so this can cause sensation of dryness in the buccal cavity and the pharynx, and it urges the individual to drink. For example, you have a dry mouth, so you may want to drink, isn't it? So sometimes this is called peripheral mechanism of thirst. Okay, and what if you took tea in the morning, or probably you drank something that has high concentration of sodium or sugar? This can directly stimulate what? This can directly stimulate the this can release. Then how is water loss controlled? Okay, how is water loss controlled? So please follow keenly these tables that I should kindly report, because somebody can be able to answer how on that. I've said about that over and over. Then Evelyn Kaganja is asking if I could repeat on peripheral methods. Now, what I'm saying on that aspect is that when you are hypovolemic, there will be decrease in probably maybe salivation, okay, salivary production. And when there's a decrease in salivary production, your mouth, your buccal cavity, and your pharynx are dry. Okay, this will urge you to drink. Okay, so this is what we call peripheral thirst mechanism, because these are more or less like these are thirst centers at the periphery, so to speak. But of course, okay. Naomi is saying, how does hypovolemia stimulate the thirst center directly? I talked about high osmolarity. Okay, that means a high blood tonicity can directly stimulate the what the thirst center. Okay, okay. And now Lucha is asking, does it mean angiotensin 2 stimulates both the anterior and the posterior hypothalamus? Yes, because we said the angiotensin 2 directly stimulates the third center, and the third center is anterior hypothalamus. It's located in the anterior hypothalamus. Okay, and then the posterior B stimulates it to produce what? To produce uh, antidiuretic hormone. Okay, antidiuretic hormone. Okay, so that is quite important and great. So we will now look at how we control water loss. Okay, how water loss is controlled. Okay. Now we want to preserve water that will stop water from going out. And so the substance here, or the chemical here, is what? Antidiuretic hormone. What is diuresis? Diuresis is boiling, passing out of excess amount of water through the urine. Okay, diuresis, passing excess amount of water through what? The urine. So this hormone, antidiuretic hormone, prevents the loss of water through the urine. Okay, and we mentioned that this antidiuretic hormone is produced from where? From the posterior hypothalamus, from the supraventricular, from the paraventricular nucleus and the supraoptic nuclei. Okay, yeah. So this is produced from there, and then it is stored in the posterior hypothalamus, in the posterior pituitary gland. Sorry, it is produced from this nuclei and stored where? In the posterior pituitary gland. Okay, so it is produced from the hypothalamus, but it is stored in the posterior pituitary gland. So when we have cases of hypovolemia, so to speak, ADH is also secreted to prevent water from being lost. Okay, so when this ADH is produced from the hypothalamus and secreted by the posterior pituitary gland, it goes into blood and it acts in the distal convoluted tubule by binding to cells called the principal cells. And when it binds on these cells, it acts by stimulating the cell to produce cyclic AMP. Okay, it acts. The receptor. Yeah, so it acts by binding to certain receptors. We call them upper. It acts by binding to its receptors that are present in the distal convoluted tubule. Okay, so another name for ADH is called what? Vasopressin. Okay, vasopressin. So another name for ADH is called vasopressin. Okay, and so this ADH that is produced from the hypothalamus and secreted by the posterior pituitary gland acts by binding to its receptors. And we have two types of receptors. We have the V1 receptors and the V2 receptors. Okay, the V2 receptors. And these V2 receptors are present in the distal convoluted tubule. Okay, so when antidiuretic hormone binds to these V2 receptors, initiates a cascade of events in the principal cells, leading to the production of cyclic AMP. Okay, and so cyclic AMP, through other reactions, leads to the production of some proteins. We call them aquaporins. Aquaporins. Okay, from the hypothalamus, and is stored in the hypovolemia, in instance of hypovolemia, okay, in the anterior pituitary gland. And another name for ADH is vasopressin. Okay. Another name for ADH is vasopressin. Okay. And how does ADH act? It acts by binding to its receptors. Okay. So we have V1 receptor and V2 receptors. Some books will tell you about V1A, V1B, and V2 receptors. But we'll get to that detail when we come to endocrine physiology. But then suffice us to mention that it acts by binding to two receptors, the V1 receptors and the V2 receptors. Okay, and if I'm not mixing the two, the V2 receptors are highly expressed where? In the distal convoluted tubule. Okay, so when ADH binds to these receptors, okay, ADH binds to these receptors. These receptors are G-coupled, these are G-coupled receptors, okay? They are G-protein coupled receptors. These receptors are G-protein coupled receptors, okay? So when antidiuretic hormone binds to these receptors, it activates an enzyme inside the principal cells in the distal convoluted tubule is activated. And so this enzyme is called adenylyl cyclase. Adenylyl cyclase enzyme. Okay. So we activate the binding of ADH to its receptors on the principal cells in the distal convoluted tubules, causes the activation of adenylyl cyclase. Okay, what does adenylyl cyclase do? It converts AT to cyclic AMP, cyclic adenosine monophosphate. Okay, so adenylyl cyclase converts ATP to cyclic adenosine monophosphate, cyclic AMP. Okay, so what is the function of cyclic AMP? Cyclic AMP activates protein kinase A. Okay, cyclic AMP activates protein kinase A. Okay, so what is the function of protein kinase A? Protein kinase A causes the phosphorylation of proteins. Okay, protein kinase A causes the phosphorylation of cellular proteins. Okay, protein kinase A causes the phosphorylation of cellular proteins. And one of the proteins that is phosphorylated is called aquaporin. Okay, now and here, so they will have different types of variations of aquaporin. Here, the one that is inserted in the cells of the distal convoluted tubule, I think is aquaporin 2. It's aquaporin 2. It's aquaporin 2. It's the cells that are inserted, if I'm not mistaken. So we have aquaporin inserted, and then what is aqua? Aqua, from the word aqua means what? Water. Okay, porin means pores. So there is insertion of this aquaporin, water pores on the membranes of the cells of the distal convoluted tubule, leading to what? Increase in the reabsorption of water. Okay, so that is what we have in those instances. So this occurs in situations of hypotonicity and hypovolemia. Hypovolemia. Okay. So this is how it so much happens. So we want to look at the clinical correlations at the end. Okay, clinical correlations at the end. So we look at what are the disorders of water balance. Okay, what are the disorders of water balance? So the first one is dehydration, of course. We have dehydration, which is a condition of negative water balance. That when the amount of situation we have emitting diarrhea, or in case of what prolonged water deprivation. Okay, we have we have a couple of students. Could you kindly repeat from protein kinase A? Okay, somebody say network fluctuations. So I didn't get anything from that point. And then the other questions as well. Okay, so I want to take it from there again. Please follow keenly. So when ADH, we said ADH, another name for it is vasopressin, and the ADH binds to its receptors. We have the V1 receptors and the V2 receptors. Okay, and so in the kidneys, it binds to the V2 receptors, if I'm not mistaken, and when it binds to these V2 receptors, these V2 receptors are G protein coupled receptors. We'll look at that detailing subsequently. Probably won't come to endocrine. That should be next academic year. So these are G coupled proteins. So when it binds to the receptor, it activates. There's an activation of an enzyme called adenylyl cyclase, okay, or adenylyl cyclase enzyme. Okay, and so what is the function of this adenylyl cyclase enzyme? It catalyzes the conversion of ATP to cyclic AMP. ATP is adenosine triphosphate. It is converted to cyclic adenosine monophosphate. Okay, and what is the function of this cyclic adenosine monophosphate? Cyclic AMP activates what? Protein kinase A. Okay, it activates what? Protein kinase A. Okay, and then protein kinase A causes the phosphorylation of cellular proteins. Okay, and one of those cellular proteins is what? Aquaporine. Okay, what is aqua? From the concept of what aqua is water, porine is pore. Okay, so when there is a phosphorylation of these proteins, they become active and they are inserted in the membrane. Okay, they are inserted on the membrane. So there are several pores through which water can enter. Okay, and then for another, we said another name for vasopressin is for ADH is vasopressin. Vasopressin means it also takes part in trying to it plays a role in blood pressure maintenance. Okay, so ADH binds to its V1 receptor on the blood vessel, and these V1 receptors, they are also G coupled, but then what is activated there is an enzyme called phospholipase C. Okay, so phospholipase C in the cells in the smooth muscle cells of the blood vessel, the phospholipase C catalyzes the conversion of phospholipids or catalyzes the conversion of phosphoinositol biphosphate to inositol. Phosphoinositol triphosphate and diacylglycerol. Okay, so the function of vasopressin in the blood vessel, what it does, it binds to the receptor, which is also G coupled, which is also a G protein coupled receptor, and it activates phospholipase C. Okay, this phospholipase C converts phospholipase C converts phosphoinositol biphosphate to phosphoinositol triphosphate and diacylglycerol. Okay, and diacylglycerol. Okay, so phospholipase C converts phosphoinositol biphosphate to phosphoinositol triphosphate and diacylglycerol. Okay, but our focus here is phosphoinositol triphosphate. So what does phosphoinositol triphosphate? Phosphoinositol triphosphate causes calcium reflux. Okay, from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and also which helps in what the muscle contraction. So there will be what vasoconstriction. So it increases intracellular concentrations of what of calcium in the smooth muscle cells of the blood vessel, which brings about what contraction of the cells and constriction of the blood vessel, and this increases what the blood pressure. Okay, so that is what to explain. And so we are talking about dehydration, and this dehydration can come about by what vomiting, diarrhea, excessive sweating, or what prolonged hypovolemia. Okay, and so when we have hypovolemia, the factors, the things we've mentioned, have angiotensin 1, angiotensin 2, and then also what we also have what antidiuretic hormone that is produced, right? Okay. And another thing to mediate this, we can also treat by giving the individuals, we give the individuals fluids orally by juice, or can give them what IV fluids. Okay, we can give them IV fluids. Okay, Evelyn is saying, I can kindly repeat the function of PIP3. PIP3 means phosphoinositol triphosphate. Okay, PIP3 means what? Phosphoinositol triphosphate. And what is the function of phosphoinositol triphosphate? It increases what? Intracellular calcium concentrations. It causes calcium efflux from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Okay, and when we have increase in calcium in the ICF, means what is calcium available for stimulating the contractile machinery, isn't it? Okay, so that is what happens. Okay? Then I'm sure the material I gave to you, you must have looked at the manifestations of what? Of dehydration. Those are things you can go through. And there I also mentioned to you why infants and children are more vulnerable to develop dehydration. Please take note of that. I think I asked that question last year. So why are infants more prone to developing what dehydration than adults? So we mentioned that what the ECF and the ICF ratio is higher in adults. Okay, we said the ECF and the ICF ratio is higher in adults. Okay, now we said more in infants, more 2/3 of the water is in the ECF, right? And when you vomit, when you have diarrhea, what is lost is it's the ECF. And also in infants and children, the kidneys are less able to retain a lot of water, so the kidneys are still forming. And then in infants, the daily insensible water loss is greater because of what? A huge surface area. Okay, so in infants, you have what? The daily insensible water loss is what? Okay. And then we also talk about hydration, so we can have overhydration. By hydration now, we have a positive water balance where the amount of water that is gained is much more than the amount of water that is lost. Okay. And Jonathan is asking if I was kindly asking if you could restate your decision not to make this video available after this session, as this interesting topic has too many terms that I'm finding new. Okay, okay. I'm still thinking about that. You may need to convince me beyond what you have said, but it's okay. Lucas Salono is asking to infants susceptibility to dehydration. Lucas, the information is I've given it. It's in your lecture material, but suffice us to mention that the ECF and the ICF ratio is quite high. That means we have the amount of water in the ICF is smaller compared to the ECF in infants. So, secondly, we also mentioned that the kidneys are less able to retain water, and then they have a daily insensible water loss. Okay, due to large surface area. Okay. So for hydration, we can see where you have a positive water balance, the amount of water stored in the tissues is more. The amount of water gained is much more than that which is lost, and so we can have what we call generalized edema. And so we would focus on edema and another discussion. Okay, from the material. the material I send out. So one of the manifestations, you have edema, generalized edema, you have excessive salivation with nausea and vomiting, and you have decreased plasma osmolarity. We have the hematocrit value decreases, the sodium concentration decreases. But note this, when we have a decrease in hematocrit value, that is, we call it hemodilution. It's not as if the number of red blood cells has decreased, but then the proportion of the red blood cells relative to the plasma has decreased. Okay. Then for sodium concentration, it doesn't decrease per se, but then we have also what we call what a hemodilution of this amount of sodium, and we'll come to that just shortly, and we'll see the beauty of it. Okay. Edward is asking the mechanism of dehydration. But it's absolutely when you are dehydrated, it's just because either you are probably from profuse sweating, you have deprived yourself from water, maybe you're bleeding, do exercise, prolong exercise, and you sweat, and probably maybe you don't replace it, you lose water, isn't it? Okay. I can take note that the connections are not quite stable, but then we'll look at that. Okay. So how do you correct overhydration? Because the first thing is the role of the body, there will be a decreased production of ADH, so ADH will not be produced as much, and then there will be little reabsorption, so water will be allowed to be excreted. Okay, and then you can also give individuals hypertonic salines to prevent water toxicity, and also you can give diuretic drugs. Okay, by diuretic drugs, these are drugs that can be able to cause diuresis. Okay, to cause diuresis. Okay. So any questions so far? So it's quite important that we take note of what any questions so far. Oliver Mukena is asking the same question that Lucas Salonda asked. Okay, probably maybe somebody will be able to help that. And I've answered Lucas's question, and that's the same question Oliver is repeating. Probably maybe the network disturbances. And then David is asking if I don't know yet. Okay. Okay. Judith, yeah, you're asking me I should go to PIP3. That we left that one like 3 years ago. Done from that area. So, okay, maybe somebody can answer those questions on the comment line, and then that could help. So the last thing we have, which we have just about 10 or 15 minutes or so to finish it, the clinical significances, okay, that we need from our understanding of water, of body fluids as well as water balance. So please make sure you make sure you follow the material that I've given you. Now, let's just look a bit about diarrhea in relation to our topic of discussion. We are not discussing diarrhea in a way, because we have diarrhea, we have various types of diarrhea, and their mechanisms of the mechanisms that underline their etiology. It's quite different. But then, so here in diarrhea, you have loss of isotonic fluid. Okay, so in diarrhea, you have what? A loss of isotonic fluid. So another word for, we can call it what? Osmotic fluid contraction. So we can call diarrhea is what? A loss of isotonic fluid. And so what? We can call it what? Isotonic fluid contraction. Okay, isotonic fluid contraction. Please take note of that. Okay, so we have loss of what? Loss of isotonic fluid. Okay, and in diarrhea, the ECF volume decreases. Let's think it through together. You have diarrhea. What do you lose? You lose what? The ECF volume. Okay, so the ECF volume decreases. Remember, what is being lost is what is an isotonic fluid. Okay, so what happens? There is no change in the ECF or the ICF osmolarity. So therefore, there will be no shift. Okay, so there will be no shift. So in diarrhea, can be caused by a myriad of pathogens, but classically, it is associated with what? With isosmotic volume contraction. Isosmotic. So what is being lost is what? Is an isotonic fluid. It's an isotonic fluid. So you have another name, we call it what? It's an isoosmotic what? Fluid contraction. So if you lose fluid that is isoosmotic, what is the implication? What is the implication? First is that it's isosmotic, so there will be no change in the ECF osmolarity, neither will there be change in what? In the ICF osmolarity. And if there is no such change in osmolarity, then what happens? There would be no shift, okay, in fluid volume. Okay, there will be no water shift. There will be no water shift. Okay, so that is quite important. Then the next thing to consider within the content of our discussion is diabetes insipidus. Okay, diabetes insipidus. Okay. So diabetes insipidus is a disease condition or a syndrome. We can call it a syndrome in which there is excessive water loss to produce inability of the diabetes insipidus. We'll come to endocrine, but for now we stated that, so we have nephrogenic diabetes insipidus and what? Neurogenic. Remember we mentioned the two major causative or the two major sources of this is that what? Either the body is unable to produce ADH, that is the brain, we call it neurogenic, or the kidneys are unable to respond to the ADH, we call it what? Nephrogenic. Okay, so it's nephrogenic. Okay. So if the body is unable to produce ADH or respond to it, what does it happen? We mean that what? We would have more water being lost in the urine, isn't it? And if there's more water being lost, that's called ECF volume is being lost, what happens? What will be left is a hypertonic solution or a hyperosmotic solution. So we can call what we have here is what? Hypovolemic, hyperosmotic volume contraction. Remember we said diarrhea was what? Isoosmotic volume contraction. But here we have what? Hyperosmotic volume contraction. So whether we have a decrease in production of inability to produce ADH or the kidneys cannot respond, there'll be free water loss from the what? There'll be decrease in water reabsorption from the distal convoluted tubules. Okay. So in this case, what happens? The ECF osmolarity increases. So if the ECF osmolarity increases, what happens? There'll be flow of water from the ICF to the ECF. Okay, there'll be flow of water from the ICF to the ECF. And if there's a flow of water from the ICF to the ECF, there'll be what? The ICF volume will contract. So we have ICF volume contraction. Okay, indicates if you are following. Okay. So we are talking about diabetes insipidus. Okay, Ruth is saying due to network fluctuations. I want to think the network fluctuation is from my side. Okay, so we're talking about a syndrome in which there is what? In which there is excessive voiding of water in the urine as a result of what? Inability of the brain to produce ADH or of the kidneys to respond to the ADH. Okay, so we have two scenarios. So we have the brain, the posterior hypothalamus unable, or the supraoptic nucleus or the paraventricular nuclei unable to produce or synthesize ADH, or the kidneys unable to respond. Okay, so if the brain cannot produce ADH, we say it is neurogenic. That means what? The diabetes insipidus is neuron oriented. The cause is is nervous based, it's neuron based, so called neurogenic. Okay, then if the kidneys are unable to respond to the ADH, is nephrogenic. Okay, the cause is from what? From the nephrons. Okay, from the nephrons. But in either case, so in either case, we say diabetes insipidus is hyperosmotic volume. Kidneys cannot be able to respond to ADH. Remember, the ADH binds to its receptors in the kidneys. What if it's unable to bind? Okay, what if there's a genetic or a congenital abnormality within the receptors that are expressed in the kidneys? That means the ADH cannot bind to them, isn't it? That means it will be non-functional. So in either case, there will be a decrease in the free reabsorption of water from the kidneys. Okay, there will be a decrease in the free reabsorption of water from the kidneys. So there will be more voiding of water in the urine. And if there's more voiding of water in the urine, the water that is the ECL that is left will be hyperosmotic. That means what? There will be more solids in the ECL volume. So there will be the hyperosmolarity of the ECF will increase. There will be hyperosmolarity of the ECF. Okay, and if there's hyperosmolarity of the ECF, what happens? There will be fluid shift from the ICF into the ECF. And if there's fluid shift from the ICF to the ECF, so the ICF volume will contract. So you have what? ICF volume contraction. Okay, so please note these little details. Okay, they are easy to be to have. So to compensate for the free loss, there will be what? There will be there's more water being lost in the urine. Okay. So please, in summary, within the multitude of words being used to explain, it's good to summarize this in that what? In diabetes insipidus, otherwise called hyperosmotic volume contraction, there is inability of the body to produce ADH or the kidneys to respond to it, and so there is water loss in the kidneys, through the kidneys, and this leads to what? A decrease in the ECL volume and an increase in the osmolarity. So when there's an increase in the osmolarity of the ECF, what happens? Water will shift from the ICF into the ECF, okay? And so if there's a shift of water from the ICF into the ECF, what will happen? The osmolarity of the ICF2 will increase, isn't it? Okay? And so that is what obtains. Okay, and then there's also what we call syndrome of inadequate ADH hypersecretion. Oh, yeah. And but then I would suspend that because it will make me to discuss more of endocrine, and then we'll bring in other things that may not be able to do that to help you much. Okay, so far this is what we've discussed today, and these are the things which you need to take note of. I hope you are listening and jotting down things. Okay, and then subsequently you try to encourage your class is about close to 400 and 400 plus, and only about 190 something persons are following the live lecture. Don't count on me uploading the videos. What you're getting from me right now, you save the time, and you're able to follow with the questions others are asking and go through. So I encourage you to follow these. Okay, you can use YouTube from your phone or from your laptop. You try to get this through. Okay, so be abreast with this. There's a possibility that you'll be assessed soon, and the assessment will be considered officially by the university. Okay, so please make sure you tell your other classmates that the next class we have, nobody should miss it. Okay, online, and we should follow. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, you make sure you do. Okay, make sure you subscribe, and if in case anything happens, you can get feedback. So, and then Kende is asking, so when you say clinical correlates, what do you mean? What are the things that are of clinical significance based on the topic we have discussed? Okay, what are the things that, for example, clinical condition that people are admitted for that, you understand, of what significance is about discussion to the clinic. Okay, so we started with diarrhea. We went with diabetes insipidus, and I was about to talk about syndrome of inadequate ADH secretion, but I felt like I may have to talk a little bit more, but then probably maybe I could even still further talk about it excessive production of ADH. Okay, syndrome of inadequate ADH secretion. So here we have excessive ADH production, and then here, what do you think will happen? Okay, so here we have it's the opposite of diabetes insipidus. Here we have hypoosmotic volume expansion. Okay, hypoosmotic volume expansion. Okay, and so there's excessive reabsorption of water from the distal completed tubule. So this decreases the osmolarity of the ECF and also increases the ECF volume. Okay, so there's a decrease in the osmolarity of the ECF because there's more water adding to the ECF. So there's decreased ECF osmolarity, but there's increased ECF volume. Okay, and this will lead to water flow from the. And this is the thing. It's well, we will talk about this aspect, but then we could also go further to discuss other things. Okay, so you have the ECF volume increases, and if there's increase in ECF volume, there's what we call hemodilution. Okay, the osmolarity decreases not because the sodium concentration, not because the amount of sodium in the blood has decreased, but because there's more water in the blood that dilutes the sodium. Okay, so the osmolarity decreases, and when the osmolarity decreases, more water will be leaving the ICF to come to the ECF as though there was no water in the ECF. Okay, so due to decrease in the ECF osmolarity, water will flow. We have ECF expansion, that hemodilution. Okay, so the osmolarity of the ECF will drop. Okay, and when so the osmolarity of the ECF drops, more water will leave the ECF into the ICF. Okay, so there will be movement of water from the ECF into the ICF, leading to what? The ICF fluid volume expansion. Okay, so there will be ICF volume expansion. Okay, as well as what? A decrease in the osmolarity of the intercellular fluid. Okay, somebody's asking, humbly, so on behalf of the other two on the whom I missed this, kindly can you make an announcement of the class, say maybe 12 hours before? Okay, thank you for the effort you're putting in this. Okay, I'm so grateful. I apologize. I wanted to inform the class of yesterday, but it was late in the night, and I failed to do that. Okay, so but next time, thank you. I want to do that. Okay. So what I could repeat the relationship between osmolarity and fluid shift with respect to syndrome of inadequate ADH secretion, where there's excessive ADH secretion. This will mean that there's enough water retention, and if there's enough water retention, the osmolarity of the ECF decreases, and if the osmolarity of the ECF decreases, more water shifts into the ICF. So we'll have ICF volume expansion and also an ICF osmolarity decrease. Okay, so that is basically what we can say for now. And I remember somebody was asking if there's a possibility of an online assessment. Yes. Okay, that's be used for your test for evaluate you. And then but before we have an official online assessment, we'll have a more or less like a practice one, so that you familiarize with the things that are required. Okay, so that is great. Please upload the video. Network is really bad for some of us. I'm not sure I'll upload. So if anybody who didn't follow can follow from the realm of the spirit. Okay. So any other questions? I don't think. So for the next class, I would announce early, and you will know it by today. So we will have it next week, and that would follow blood. We'll first of all handle the first PowerPoint I sent to you before coming back to the physiology of edema. So that would have given you enough time to study it. Okay. Any other questions so that we can round up with class? And so please make sure you share within your class WhatsApp group every person who hasn't filled the questionnaire with the second questionnaire I sent on learning environment. Please make sure you do that. That will be essentially good. Okay. Okay. Yes, that would be good. If you haven't filled the questionnaire, please you do that and encourage other people to do. Okay. So we will come after this. The next class we'll have will be on the blood. Okay, the one I sent you to first. Then after that, we'll come back to the physiology of edema. And that's why I didn't discuss more on edema. We'll come back to it. Okay. Well, please, we will keep apologizing on behalf of the network, but it's also as bad on this side as it's on any other side. Okay. I thought probably maybe coming using the class, bringing the class early, the network will be better, but maybe. And the last class we had, the network was better in the evening, but then I also think that in the evening, students maybe will want to assist in home chores and preparing for supper. Okay, so okay, thank you so much. And if there are any questions, please make sure. Okay, some of you who haven't also registered within the student forum. Yeah, in the student forum. Yeah, if you haven't registered, please make sure you do. Okay. Syndrome of inadequate or inappropriate ADH secretion. What called syndrome of inadequate ADH hypersecretion. Okay. Syndrome of inadequate ADH hypersecretion. Okay. But we'll still look at this. ADH hypersecretion. If you before the lecture we've had. Somebody was saying most of the things we are learning are missing in the notes. Oh, the notes are nothing. Those are PowerPoints. You don't expect to learn from PowerPoint. These are just guides. PowerPoints are just guides. Okay. Josephat Mokuka, kindly ask if you don't delete the video because I was not aware of any class until 30 minutes ago. Okay, let's see what will happen and let's see how it goes. Okay, thank you and have a great day. And please stay safe and keep your heads up. Okay, if you have any questions, please you can if you have any questions, you can be able to send them on send them through the student forum. Okay. Thank you.